What is compelling about painting for me is still a mystery, which is probably why I continue to be involved. I know that when I get new colors, I can't wait to get to the studio to use them, to squeeze them out in big globs, and then to put it onto a surface, just the brushing on of it, when it's thin, when it's thick, when it's like butter, when it's like syrup, when it's crusty and rough. All of that, that tactile thing, I don't know how to explain that. I don't know that I want to explain that. It's just what I do, what I want to do, what I keep wanting to learn to do. Sometimes what I make is fairly literal, but it's a way of holding on to certain experiences. It's a way of holding on to certain memories. It's a way of engendering memory. It's a way of holding on to my family. My father's been dead since the early 80s, and when I'm working, I remember him, and it's not necessarily specific, but it's what I'm feeling when I'm making. And there are times when I don't know what I'm thinking. When I'm in the studio and things are going really well, I'm not conscious of what I'm thinking, or as often as not of what I'm making, and that is what is joyous about it, the surprise of it. I think if I couldn't be surprised by what I make, I probably wouldn't do it. And that's not to say that I work out of a kind of ignorance. Rather than ignorance, there is mystery. There's a kind of not knowing and yet knowing, because you have to have a great deal of faith to keep getting up there. It's a pretty silly activity. At one level, it's a funny way to spend a lifetime. I can't imagine spending my life any other way. I can't imagine anything else being that rewarding. When nothing else makes sense, this kind of senseless activity makes the only sense. People who have the need to make. You twirl little pieces of paper and you find a certain kind of delight in the shape that's made, or just the way it feels. Or you put popsicle sticks together, or you make up your face, because it's just another surface. I've now had wonderful experiences with printers who collaborate. I was teaching at the University of Texas in Austin, and my teaching assistant, Thomas van der Linden, became my printer and collaborator. And he knew much more about the processes than I did. So I'd say to him, Tom, I want this to do blah, blah, blah. And he'd say, well, Mary O'Neil, Mary Lovelace, why don't we try this? So I love that kind of collaboration, but I think I like ultimately being the boss, that I can say, well, I don't really like that. You have to show me how to change this. I like trying to figure out how that thing is going to look when it comes out of the press, because the press itself, that thing, that big piece of machinery, is another element. It's another person, practically, who works on my idea, because when it comes through the press, it becomes something else. And often, as often as not, it's really a surprise for me. I'm not the kind of printmaker that can anticipate every single thing that can happen. If there's too much moisture in the air with a lithograph, it's going to affect its printing. the acid, if it's old or what have you, is going to affect the initial bite of the plate. But every single thing that happens can be made into something important. It's like you get up every day. Every day is not the same. You know, you get up with a headache, and you work around that to accomplish what it is you've got to accomplish in that day. And it's the same way when there's a mistake, so-called, in the process. You're always taking advantage of these surprises. Maybe the printer knows exactly what you're going to get. I doubt it. But perhaps he comes closest in terms of the collaboration to knowing what's going to come out. I'd love having my work reproduced. It means that many, many more people can own it. Growing up in the civil rights movement has a great deal to do with who I am and how I think about what I am and what is important to me. I don't think I would be the kind of maker that I am if I had not experienced certain kinds of things, if I hadn't actually been willing to die for certain kinds of things, if I hadn't been willing to be jailed for certain kinds of things, if I hadn't been willing to be kicked out of school, to lose certain kinds of friends. And that has to do with what I make and what I think about making and what I value, and what I see, how I see, what touches me, what angers me. What I say to people about looking at painting is to look, because that's what it's there for. It's visual. It's not a song. It may make you feel like singing. It's all about seeing, and we can burden painting with whatever, and we can develop, and we have developed an industry around painting. It's called criticism. But the thing comes through your eye, and if you allow yourself to be caught by it, then the thing is doing its job. A success to me is being able to make my work year in and year out. I think the first time I felt successful was in undergraduate school when I made a painting that Driscoll found interesting, and he said it reminded him of a soutane. So that was probably the first big success. I had come back from a summer at Skowhegan, and I was beginning to understand paint, understand something important about it. So that was a big success for me. And I would say I've had an extraordinarily successful career because I've been able to maintain a studio all of my professional life. I tell you, every morning I wake up, I am successful. You know, every day that God gives me is a success.